Now we'll take a look at step 2, which is examining the system and making your best guess. Essentially establishing a working theory. Now there's a couple rules in this step as well. Number 1 rule here, this is actual troubleshooting rule number 5, is to make no assumptions. This is the hardest rule to follow during the troubleshooting process because you just instinctively think you know what it is, you want to jump in. But do your own investigating after the user tells you about the problem, and then test that. So in doing all this, the next troubleshooting rule number 6 is to just try the simple things first. Because essentially most problems are easy to fix, and you can probably fix them. So check those simple things first. As an example, let's say the USB drive is reported as not working. Well, verify that that USB flash drive works on another computer. Therefore, you know that if it's the actual USB drive, or if now you need to take a look at the possible drivers on the first computer, the host computer. If someone just reported that they can't get on the internet, check the Ethernet cable. Maybe it doesn't have a full connection on the computer or even the wall. So start with those simple things first. To kind of form your best theory and test, reproduce the problem and observe for yourself as the troubleshooter what the user has described to you in step 1. Then decide if the problem is hardware or software related. Make your best guess as to the source of the main problem. Like if, let's say the video doesn't work, best guess is that the monitor cables are loose, or even the possibility that the monitor is either turned off or there's no power going to the monitor. I've seen this happen a lot of times, where, as an example, someone says, well, the PC's not working. Well, then you find out that either the PC's unplugged from the power supply to the wall, or that they've got it plugged into a surge protector that's not turned on, and you flip the switch on the surge protector, magically the computer comes on. So this is just an example of troubleshooting the easy items, the low-hanging fruit, and then taking that best guess to see if you can find the source of the problem. So test your guess. And you can use this steps here. You can see how we test the guess. Is your guess confirmed? Yes. Well, then move on to step 4. If it's not, then go back in and circle through everything and see if you can eventually get to the source of the problem. Another rule here, or troubleshooting rule here in step 2, which is troubleshooting rule number 7, is to become a researcher. In the IT world, this is one of the best steps, the best tools to have as a troubleshooter, is the ability to research. Search the web, using whatever browser you want to use. Ask different questions. Read documentation from, the manufacturer. Read forums. If you need to call a vendor, just use those troubleshooting tools to your advantage. Once you've got it into the step 3 of testing your theory. An example of a test here in step 3 is to let's say the video does not work and you suspect loose cables. Just check the connection and discover if it's loose or not. See if those pins have been turned all the way in. Make sure they're making a good solid connection, or if one might have a partial connection and the other one is not seated enough to make the pins and the port match up so that your video stream is there. Troubleshooting rule number 8 here in step 3 of test your theory is to divide and conquer. Isolate your problem, such as removing a piece of hardware or software component, and then another until the problem is isolated. Let's say in Windows, stop all of your non-essential services running in the background. Boot from a CD or DVD to eliminate the operating system on the hard drive. Start Windows in safe mode. This is used all the time, and when you start it in safe mode, you can eliminate any of those unnecessary startup programs. So there's lots of different steps that you can take as you're testing your theory. Another rule here in step 3 is rule number 9. This is write things down. Take very good notes through the whole process. If you need to, draw some diagrams out or make lists of those things that you've done or tried. Another rule, rule number 10, is to don't assume the worst. Now, when working with a hard drive that's not working, don't assume that all your data is lost. Generally, you can retrieve data from a failing hard drive. Troubleshooting rule number 11 here in step 3 of testing our theory is to reboot and start over. Users hate when we say this, but a lot of times problems can be resolved by simply rebooting the computer. When in doubt, reboot. Sometimes you may need to just take a break and walk away from the problem, come back and start all over again. That's perfectly fine. Just make sure to go through your steps, take good notes, and don't lose your cool here. So once you've tested your theory, now we want to move into step 4 here in our diagram, and that is to plan and fix and resolve the problem. So if you've planned the fix, plan the steps to fix the problem, and then see if that fixes your original problem. Remember, you're only fixing one problem at a time here. A rule of thumb here to remember, which is rule number 12, is use the least invasive solution first. So fix the problem so that the system returns to a normal working condition state with the least amount of effort. Don't try to just, this kills me, but a lot of people just think the solution, and I'm not going to call out any chains here, but their solution is just to wipe everything out and reinstall the operating system. You don't need to do that every time. So please do not do that. Do the most least invasive solution first. Another rule here, rule 13, is to know your starting point. Find out what works and doesn't work before you take anything apart, everyone. Make sure you know that. And you probably in this step have a lot of different solutions in mind, but consider different solutions and then select the least invasive one here. Before applying your solution, determine what works and doesn't work. Once you figure out what does work, fix the problem. Once you've done that, you can now you think you've fixed the problem, move on to step 5, which is simply verify that the fix has worked and solved the problem, and then take any preventive action that can be taken for future. So after the problem is fixed, reboot the system as always, and verify that the computer is in its normal running state. Have the user check everything and verify also. Don't just think, oh yep, it's fixed, and then walk away. As I said earlier, engage your user. Let them have the comfort of knowing that they have started it and everything's working as needed before you left the area. And ask yourself this question during this step 5. Could this problem have prevented? If so, instruct the user on what to do, and then maybe some things such as easy as setting Windows to automatically install updates would have prevented this issue from occurring. Go ahead and take that step, especially if you're working on home PCs where group policies aren't in effect and computers aren't set up the way they should be. This is one of those simple steps that you can take to make sure that they are getting their updates as needed. And lastly, step 6 is very critical here. It's to document what happened. Always, always, always document your findings, actions, and then what the outcomes were once you reached resolution. The reasons you want to document it to help when troubleshooting the next situation. You might run into this again. Or possibly another reason is to train others so that they don't have to start from scratch and they can easily see what you did to solve the problem. As well as a need for documenting is to satisfy any audits or employer inquiries about your work. If you have to go through audits for, let's say, JSOX or SOX here in the US for Sarbanes-Oxley, an auditor will look at your tickets, your work, and want to see all the steps that were taken to verify that you are doing what you say you're doing. So make sure you have that documentation, even if it's in your ticket software, whether it's some type of log files you keep, maybe you have some type of system internal to your work that needs to be done. Make sure you document all of the findings and actions and outcomes. Well, that's it for those steps and rules. Step 1, interview the user and back up all data. Step 2, establish a theory. Once you have that theory, move into Step 3 to test your theory. Step 4, plan the fix and resolve the problem, hopefully. If you don't fix it, go back and test another theory you might have had. But before moving on to Step 5, make sure you have fixed the problem. Once you fix the problem, move into Step 5, which is to verify that you fixed it and see if there's anything you can do to take a type of preventive action so that this does not occur again in the future for the customer. And lastly, Step 6 in the troubleshooting process is to document. That's it for the troubleshooting process. Let's move on to the next part of the chapter.